Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 13th day of the New Earth Summit. Now, in its third year, India's first integrated summit on solutions to our problems in health, food, farming, and environment. I'm Daryl D'Souza, founder of Earthkeepers Connect, the platform that's hosting these webinars, and your host for this evening. And I extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and to our audience. Also, on behalf of our 10 Earthkeeper groups in India and overseas. And we express our gratitude to you for taking out time from your busy schedules to be with us today and to share your insights and experience so that all watching this live webinar and its recording later may benefit from the holistic science and wisdom being presented on this platform. That will help us all co-create a beautiful world. Our topic for today is growing healthy food using heirloom seeds. So I will start with introducing our panelists for today to the audience. Sutaria is a food activist. He is the co-founder of An Heirloom Foods, Goa. Working under the aegis of Annie Coley to propagate her philosophy of circle of God that includes farm, food, and health. At Anna, Jay works closely with heirloom superfoods and people with chronic health conditions. At Anna or anywhere, Jay helps people navigate through the many complexes of modern science and demystifies perspectives on many relevant issues such as organic certified food, cancer, and other autoimmune conditions. His message is followed through by real solutions and the power of ancient foods. Clea Chandmal has a bachelor's and master's degree in the biological sciences and more specifically in molecular and plant sciences from the University of Cambridge, UK. She did her permaculture design certificate course, PDC, with Bill Mollison, Jeff Lawton, and Greg Cribbs in Melbourne in 2008. Since 1997, she has been farming in Goa in the foothills of the Western Ghats. And her farm is called Foyd's Farm. When Clea started on the farm, it was largely infertile, but now it is a zero waste farm, has a flourishing food forest, and is a natural home to several endangered endemic plant and animal species. As a preamble to her courses, she teaches the way the earth is wired. Clea's TED Talk, From Forest to Farm, shows a scientific and ecologically biased approach to permaculture. She has pioneered a novel approach to soil regeneration called the Forest Flowway, trademarked, with dramatic results. So via her e-letter Regenerate, Clea hopes to send a positive way of thinking called regenerating thinking. So for our third panelist, Bhagyashree Sheikh, she is an ardent zoologist and nature lover. She did her master's in environmental sciences from Institute of Sciences, Mumbai. A merit student and state topper in her favorite subjects, she soon found herself lecturing the postgraduates. After actively involving herself in various environmental campaigns in Mumbai, she chose the Khazan land ecosystem of Goa as her project, work for ICAR, Old Goa, for her post-graduation. Since 10 years, she is meeting farmers and understanding challenges faced by them. She followed her nature-loving husband, Irfan Sheikh, to his native place, Goa. Together, they are actively involved in promoting sustainable lifestyle practices in Goa, through their social enterprise called Keys Eco Solutions. And in a short span of time, they have already conducted various free herbal gardening workshops in schools, colleges, and villages. They have also set up free marketing platforms called Sustainable Lifestyle Market or Sulimark to promote organic farming and farmers. So, for the first hour of this webinar, I have a couple of questions for our panelists, which will be followed by questions and answers with our audience at 7 p.m. Who may type in their questions in the Q&A box below, even before that time. If you would like to receive the recorded version of this webinar to share it with others, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The New Earth Summit. So now for my first question to the panelists. And I would like to present it first to Bhagyashree. What are the heirloom, why are heirloom seeds important when we talk about eating local, seasonal, and organic for good health? So Bhagyashree, if you could mention one important point, then I'll take a next important point from Jay and from Clea. Yeah. So I'm just framing the question again.
Okay.
Why are heirloom seeds important when we talk about eating local, seasonal, and organic food for good health? And if you could also just explain the term heirloom, because we would have some viewers today who are still have a little question mark on that word.
Okay. So most commonly, seeds are the seeds which are particularly native to that region. They're cultivated generations after generation. Actually, initially there was nothing called as heirloom seed and hybrid seeds. They were just local seeds which were preserved by local people generation after generation. It is after commercial industrialization of seed thing, like now there are hybrid seeds, GMO seeds, and F1 hybrid, different type of seeds which are coming. These are referred as heirloom seeds. They were there, so they were best suited for that region, for the climate, topography, and for the people of that region. And they were most favored, so they were cultivated generation after generation. So these seeds we commonly referred as heirloom seed. So the question itself, what I have heard, that for to eat local food. So when we say local food, natural, organic, without any chemicals, without artificial fertilizers. So these seeds are most favorite seeds for the farmer, for the people who want to grow, so that what you are growing in that region, which is there, and you are here to grow that more, take it further, and then this way you can cultivate your kitchen garden, you can grow different things. So you don't need to rely on other seeds, because the beauty of this seed is if you save the seeds correctly, you can preserve some part of the seeds and you can regrow. You don't need to go for another packet of seed and buy it from another site or any commercial vendor. These things grow best in the region. They have a good color, good size, that particular taste which are required for that particular cuisine. Frankly speaking, now here in Goa we have Kola chili, Mapsa chili, Kankona chili. So if you make fish curry using these chili, so you get that regular, nice, expected flavor of the curry which is there. So there are other commercialized chilies also in the market. Red chili, what we get, we can prepare with that, but the taste will vary. So this is one common example I can give. So when we say heirloom seeds, they are very important to be preserved, and whatever are preserved are not easily accessible. They are commercially speaking. If you want to buy, we can go to local farmer. In Goa currently, tamdi bhaji, that is red amaranth, davi bhaji, cucumber, pumpkin, padua, these are the few seeds which you can get easily. But talking about particularly akshi brinjal or any particular chili, or for that matter, moira banana, so things like that needs to be preserved. Otherwise, access for that will be a good question, like how it will be available. So this is one point about heirloom seeds, and in order to grow local organic food, they are very important. When we say organic, we look at the seed from where we start, and soil. So soil is there, okay, but seed is the main part which we need to consider. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Bhagyashree. So people would have understood by now the meaning of heirloom And also thank you for mentioning that one principle, which is seed saving, very important thing.
Yeah.
Jay, could you give any more detail on the importance of uh, heirloom? What are its particular characteristics or capacity, or you know, yes.
Thank you, Bhagyashree. See, when we talk about heirloom seeds and heirloom, usually we talk about heirloom seeds. We don't talk about heirloom food. The reason is because it has become very obvious what the advantages of heirloom seeds are compared to hybrid and modified seeds, where they are not as stable in the environment. They need a lot more inputs to manage, and then you have to purchase it. So heirloom seeds are cheaper, and cheaper means it's free of cost for the farmer, because he grows his own and cultivates his, saves his own seeds and shares it, compared to hybrid or GMO, which he has to purchase. So people talk about heirloom seeds, but the whole point of seeds and farming is for eating, and eating is for health. So I always refer to it as heirloom food, more importantly, rather than heirloom seeds. Um, and from a perspective of heirloom food, why is heirloom food important as a food for health? That's the question. So I want to make a quick case about heirloom food, summarize why I have been working for almost now, I don't know, 8-10 years trying to promote the concept of heirloom food. Heirloom is just a fancy English word for what we in Goa call gauti, or in India we call desi, or in North India and South India, some places we call it nati. These are all different words for something that means that it is original, passed on from generation to generation. In heirloom, in English, heirloom means what? In nowadays modern day, heirloom means someone gets jewelry, or a Rolex watch, or a house. Back in the day, farmers would only get the main thing they would get was their land, their stock, and the seeds. And the seeds was the most important part of the heirloom, because that's what took the generations forward. um, but coming back to heirloom as food, more than just the seed for the farmer. Uh, so now let's understand something about cancer first. Then I'll just come to heirloom, because I want to draw a parallel between the two, and why it's heirloom food is such a relevant topic now more than ever before. Um, Cancer, almost 50% of all developed nations are now beginning to um, agree and accept that 50% of their population is suffering from cancer or will suffer from cancer. They have no cure for many obvious reasons. Um, uh, but cancer is very widespread, and even people, monks, yoga gurus, billionaires like Steve Jobs, all these people are not being able to escape from cancer. And cancer, as we know, is a genetic malfunction of our cells. And it is time we start connecting the dots between genetically mutated or compromised food and a genetic malfunction like cancer. Uh, how does a vegan billionaire like Steve Jobs not be able to survive cancer with all the money in the world? And so this all goes into a scientific discussion, which I won't get too deep into. But the idea is that the genetics of heirloom food uh, 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 is equivalent to something what we call natural. When we take these seeds and when we have hybridized them or mutated them by mixing one thing with the other and taking them across the planet and then letting the environment mutate it constantly, these kind of things become unnatural mutations in the genetics of those seeds. And our DNA is only designed to process other DNA from nature. But when this DNA comes, which is modified / mutated by man, our cells get confused. And apart from all these unnatural molecules that are entering our body nowadays, like chemicals and so many other unbiodegradable, unnatural molecules, it's also there are people who are not consuming so much chemicals, and also suffering from very many problems, because all our varieties of food, we have modified them a little bit in the farm. This is not the modification we are talking about what Monsanto does in the lab. This is the mutations that we do as humans, very happily, and not we thinking that all these are natural ways, because it was not done in a lab. But that doesn't make it natural. And that also comes to the question of what we are defining as organic food. Does organic only mean that it does not have chemicals? Doesn't the word organic suggest that it comes from an organism, and about it being very natural rather than man-made? So when you talk about organic, if the genetics are not natural, if they are meddled with by man, and just because you have not used chemicals in it, and then so every time we come up with these certifications, and we come up with a new standard of, the government comes up with a new standard of what is called safe food. And we have seen what happens when we follow their guidelines of what they consider what is safe food. So the meaning of organic needs to be redefined, and it needs to take into account the genetics of the plant, and go back to the days where, like Bhagyashree said, there was no hybrid and no this and that. There was only heirloom everywhere. In the whole world, everyone ate only heirloom food because the genetics were not modified by anyone. But now that's not available practically anywhere, even in a farming country like India. Heirloom seeds have become a minority, and hybrid seeds have become the majority now. About 80% of our country has moved to hybrid. Maybe 20-30% is left. The absolute poor farmers who never wanted to switch, who didn't know better, who we call completely ignorant, are the ones who will probably save the world, because they have saved the seeds.
Yes, thank you, Jay, for that perspective. Clea, could you please share about the importance of heirloom seeds? Any scientific deeper aspect about it?
So an heirloom seed is one which has been in your area or your landscape or your country perhaps for generations and generations and generations. They're native, and they've not necessarily evolved in your land, but they've been naturalized there. They've come from somewhere, say the potato or the tomato. They've come from wherever it's come from, but it's been naturalized, and you've got seeds that you can save. So if you can save a seed which becomes the same thing afterwards, it's clonal. Means it's got very little genetic variation. Okay, if I can have the same babies every day, and you have very little genetic variation. So to ensure variation for survival, heirloom seeds have, like for beans, you have over 100 beans in the same native space, so that you have genetic variation for survival over climate change or disease or whatever, and they're all adapted to your soil. So the main reason why heirloom seeds are useful and good is only when you have like 10 types of tur dal of your area, 10 types of mooli of your area, 10 types of bhindi, and 10 types of chili of your area, all clonal. Otherwise, they fall into similar issues as hybrids, not in terms of genetics, but in terms of survival. If climate changes or if a new bacteria or bug comes along, they can die out. So for food security, heirloom seeds with its variants of the local area is very important. And if you have food security, you're going to have nutrition. And if you have nutrition, you're going to have health. I won't delve into whether you treat them or you can. I know many people using heirloom seeds, but not using organic methods. So heirloom and organic don't necessarily go together. Heirloom is just a seed that's been around in your area for a long time, genetically clonal often. If they're not, then you have to go through a lot of fancy seed saving mechanisms by bagging them and keeping them away from crossing naturally to create a natural hybrid. So a lot of seeds like rice cross. And so to keep heirloom rice seeds, you have to ensure your growing is nowhere near someone else's heirloom rice growing, because those two can cross. So we're in a difficult, not easy to explain it fully, properly, genetically and scientifically, except the main point is it's been around for a while. Most often the seed can be saved because they're clonal. Being clonal is dangerous, and so without having a variety of the heirloom seed of your area, you will not have food security. Because these seed are adapted to your area, whatever little changes that happen in the environment, a new bacteria or fungus or change in climate comes along, these are highly likely to be more adaptable than a hybrid seed. Now, why do we say hybrid seeds may not be adaptable? It's because they've been bred specifically for either color, size, uniformity, disease resistance, and so on and so on. Not often for survival, for saving, and for rapid, easy growth in your area. I buy a hybrid seed, I can grow it in Africa, I can grow it in India, and I can grow it in South America. So the hybrid seed often they've not thought about where it grows, they've only thought about how it looks, which is why you may have to spray it and do all kinds of other things to it. Okay, so that's the difference. GMO, I will not go into that. The main thing really is food security under difficult environmental stresses. Nothing else will grow.
Okay, thanks, Clea. Now, I just want to share something short, and then Clea, I would like your feedback.
Yes.
Okay, it's about my plant medicine journey.
Hmm.
And my plant medicine journey was assisted by hemp. And I'll just say that much. So, in this plant journey, I had very deep experiences with the plant kingdom. And plants were talking to me at that time, and they said, you know, that we are always at war. And I said, what do you mean that you are always at war? And they said, we never sleep. So I said, war with whom? They say with kind of it's not something bad. It's something creative. It is what we've evolved to do. You know, in the daytime, you know, at war means we are in an environment and we have got certain organisms in the soil and we got certain organisms in the air and we create what is called microtoxins in a very simple terminology that is, we create biological substances that help fight the pests in our leaves and pests in the soil. And we allow certain things to be symbiotic with us and we repel something. So they say just because it's night, don't think that we are asleep. The top of our body is asleep, but we do some, warfare in our soil. And and they also shared with me that humanity is at war with us, and you have to understand very deeply that we are going to win this war, and humanity is going to lose. So I said, how come? They said because the kind of changes that you all are doing to us, which are unnatural, those changes will get into your digestive system. They will mess up your microbiome, and generation by generation, you all will die off. So I'm now just taking that. I From that I'm going to connect it with heirloom seeds. Now, what I understood about heirloom seeds is when the seed is very local to that land for many years, or let's say 300, 500 years, it has maintained its genetics in such a way that it knows all the soil organisms that are there in that space. When its plant grows, it knows what it has to deal with in terms of season after season, some season variation, various kinds of pests that come over there. And so all of this information, this plant, if it is surviving now after 300 years in that place, it has got the best mechanics, and everything that it has done in its warfare is to survive, to be strong, to take all the minerals from the ground and be very robust. And so these heirloom seeds, they turn out to have very good natural germ repelling capacity. So then the soil is well mineralized, they grow well, and they do not get easily harmed by pests. But when you take this heirloom seed from this soil and you will go and put it in another state of the country or another part of the planet, the entire soil is different. The environment is different. The first time it comes up from the ground, it sees that the seasons are slightly different, the pressure is different, the amount of sunny days or sun in the day is different. So it starts, it starts getting weakened. So my basic point is this, that is it so that, if you will take this heirloom seed and put it somewhere else for 1 to 3 generations, maybe it will not perform well because it has to readjust its DNA to that environment. So that was just my observation, and my question was this: is it the strongest part of the strongest aspect of the heirloom seed that it has the best germ fighting capacity, it has the best capacity of taking nutrients from the soil, giving you good produce, and being a robust plant?
So, this is also very hard for me to answer correctly. So today our soils are very depleted. You're very unlikely to find local soil organisms in there. So even if your heirloom seed is sending out exudates, calling them, because we burn, we put ash, we remove weeds, we leave soil bare, we've lost most of our soil organisms often, especially in farmlands. So if they're there, you're right. If they exist, if they're happy and well, got their food and habitat, then you're right. Seeds, plants, trees, shrubs give off what they call root exudates to bring in the local species that they are symbiotically, often mutualistically, or just they are adapted to. And that's what we mean when we say local seeds are adapted to the environment and grows well. It takes into account all of this, the soil biology, the temperature, the seasons, the companions, the stuff that's around them, and they're happy. But what we are facing right now are changes due to human activity, changes in soil biology. We are getting organic farmers selling us microorganisms from made in Japan, your EM splashed about everywhere. Now, how is that? That your local bhindi has no idea what EM organisms are. So yes, we have lost the soil life, and we are bringing in all kinds from everywhere in little bottles, in your digester, in your ammo bottles, all called organic. So your plant, for various reasons, is not going to recognize or be happy with the soil. Yeah, so that's first step. But now, okay, I've just talked about soil. Imagine if the climate changes slightly, or it rains more than it should, or it's hotter than or colder than it was. New soil organisms may hatch, new pests may hatch, new organisms which were dormant may think, oh, it's time to wake up. And that plant may not be fully adapted then, because it wasn't ever ready for it, right? That is the importance of local but genetically variable species. You can't just have heirloom one variety, even though it's heirloom. That genetic variation, if it's not there, you will not have survival, you will not have adaptation, you will not have the ability for it to handle the changes. So it's not just the seed, it's what you do, what the soil condition is, what's happening with the climate, what's happening with so many factors. So the plant is doing its best, and luckily for you and me, plants are plastic. So basically the point is, you're right, and it depends though. The answer is it depends. But because plants are plastic, there is, without its DNA being changed, it's an epigenetic space. where it can adapt very fast to changes. But not every heirloom seed can adapt. So you need variation, you need variety. I cannot express
So,
more and more.
Clea, then as per that, if plants can adapt fast, then obviously the heirloom seed can also adapt when the, climate changes a bit.
Not that one. Suppose you have one heirloom seed, the seven-sided bhindi. You need to have all the other bhindis also of Goa going with that.
Okay.
All the heirloom seeds of the bhindi, of the various varieties have to be, in Peru, the potatoes, there's a black, there's a red, there's a small, they're all heirloom. But without the variety, you're in a very unsafe space for food security or even nutrition.
Okay. I'm just getting a very important point from there, what you mentioned earlier,
Yes.
that now if I'm assuming that the heirloom variety of some seed that is grown naturally, maybe in the forest area and all that, and it has been there for 300 years. Now farmers may take it and then they bring it to the soil where they are cultivating. But that soil is not the forest soil, and that's whatever the farmer has made. So
Yes,
anyway, it's a different environment for that heirloom seed,
yes.
and then you have that seed wondering, what kind of this is, and trying to adapt to it, and not having that much strength as the forest. So yeah, that point I've taken very well, that it's depending on what our farmers are doing to the soil and are they making good soil. And yesterday also there was one question on this, and when people were saying, iodine is missing and we need to add iodine. And I just said that there's a natural flow. I don't want to get into that deep, but I said there's rainwater, and in the forest there's a natural flow. But whenever we talk of farmlands, you can only hear the farmers saying NPK, adding to the soil, where the rest of the 75, elements being added. So,
Yeah.
Jay, would you like to comment on what I shared?
Yes, yes. The soil for sure. Well, the nutrition in your plant is dependent on how mineral rich and how rich indigenous soil organisms you have in your soil. Those
Correct.
all work together to create the soluble minerals which the plant can take up. But the other thing, Darrell, is that suppose one farmer takes an heirloom seed and does a monoculture of this heirloom seed, he's not going to be free of disease. It's not that they are disease resistant to that extent. You have to have in biodiversity and genetic variation. You cannot avoid that.
Okay. Okay. Clea, thank you. Jay, would you like to comment on what I shared about, this biological warfare and immunity?
I'd like to respond to what Clea said. See, we work with a lot of heirloom farmers, and the lady who I worked with has been working with heirloom farmers for about 50 years. Her name is Annie Kohli. And they do monoculture. And if you see their produce, it's outstanding. You can come to our shop, you can have a look at some of the produce. It's world class, and it's medicinal, and it's life giving. And they do monocultures. So this is the on ground reality. What they do use is also zero budget natural farming, which Annie kind of teaches them, but she has also given them an enzyme which has been created from the Indian cow's ecosystem, which gives birth to the ancient white worm, which Clea very rightly mentioned, that the organisms of the Indian soil have changed. And a lot of organisms from everywhere else have come, and even the red worms that we see in India, most of them that is mostly an Australian origin, is what is understood. And the original Indian worm of the Indian soil, which makes the Indian soil rich and happy and strong, is the white worm. Uh, uh, I don't know the technical name. There has been many debates over this, but in Hindi it's called Sapling Kechwa.
If I could mention also, yes, I had taken, some of those worms, put them in my soil, and after 2 years, when I dug deep, I could see they are deep, and the
Right,
other red worms are shallow on top. So when I dug
right.
about 1 foot deep and 1.5 foot deep, I could see those guys still there, and they were brown,
Yeah,
and they were like 1 inch,
yeah.
a little more harder, a little flat,
Thicker.
and
Yeah,
yeah, they are still around.
yeah. So those are the original worms of the Indian soil that now you don't find anywhere, and people are not even aware what this is, this worm is. And and unfortunately what happens is also that even if you, like in your garden, if you have because I gave you the enzyme and you cultivated these worms, but what is happening is the red worms are the topsoil dominant, and these white guys go very deep, which is why they oxygenate the soil very deep, and that's why you get good flowering and fruiting, good fruiting rather, in your plants, because those white guys go very deep. But the problem is that the red guys who dominate the topsoil don't make it a very convenient environment for the white guys to thrive. So it takes time to build the population of the white guys so that the environment becomes their home, and the red worms find it unwelcome to be there. The idea is that these white worms, and using the Indian cow's dung, what you create in the so you can make, for example, compost with this enzyme in about 40 days. Now, the idea is that you create the soil, because like Clea rightly mentioned, that the soil conditions have changed, and which is why we see that, okay, either you need a whole all the entire range of all the bhindis so that they can help each other to survive, or like our farmers are doing, and many thousands of farmers are doing in the country, heirloom organic farming, monocultures, and doing very well, no problem, having fantastic produce. um, their soil is rich, and if a lot of our farmers who we generally source from, who have been trained over the decades by Annie Coley, and who use this enzyme and have cultivated this white worm in their soil and recreated the original soil conditions of ancient India, you see their produce. It's just absolutely mind blowing, their produces. It's very easy to see and tell, to eat and tell. There's a marked difference.
Yes, thanks, Jay. So we will get into soil now a bit. That we have talked about heirloom seeds and their importance. So I'll come to my next question, um, because in this webinar, first we wanted to emphasize that you need to have local and heirloom seeds if you want to stay with the philosophy of eat local, seasonal, and natural for good health. Now, talking about soil, Bhagyashree, if you could share with us, what are the important factors that contribute to healthy soil when people want to grow a wide range of food for themselves. Now that is somebody like me. Okay, I am trying to grow 25 fruits and vegetables around my house, and so this question is not for farmers who do 1, 2, 3 crops. Let's talk about people who want to make themselves self-sustaining. Even this project that I'm doing in Goa, of our eco village in Goa, definitely in that we want to grow a wide range of food and be self-sufficient. So we are catering to ourselves and our community. So what would be important aspects of soil to grow a wide range of food throughout the year, so that we have food throughout the year?
Yeah, so the main focus, as we mentioned, is for the home growers, kitchen gardeners, you can say. So now when we say self-sustainable food throughout the year, so there are different categories to it. There are something called as microgreens that one can grow in small trays, which are fulfilling the basic nutrition. Then there are herbal gardens, like for example, for tea, if you need lemongrass, tulsi, some herbs that can be grown. And in the limited space around the house, there can be like fruiting trees which can be grown. And there is a system for multi-level gardening where you are growing roots underground, something like turmeric, some tubers which are there. Then over the ground creepers are there, and then something like maize or some other crops are there. So depending on the harvest time, looking at the space and the time period you are looking at, you can cultivate plants accordingly and they will fruit. So here, when we talk about heirloom seeds and organic food, some particular plants and all our combinations are there, like companion plants, which will well together. For example, if you're planting tomato, then if you plant marigold or basil along with it, will do nicely. If you're doing cabbage and companion plant, with that they will be happy. And as Clea mentioned rightly, if you have diversity there, so food wise also you have different sources which will provide you food, and diversity wise it is very good to tackle the pest attack, like which can be minimized. And talking about soil fertility, one
So,
is
yes,
part,
Bhagyashree, before you get to soil,
yeah,
because let me just expand this, like you gave the example of tomato and all. So, instead
yeah,
of just for a home, let us expand it to a little bigger, a society where we are,
okay,
we're trying to grow our grains as well. If we're eating rice or if we're eating dal or if we want beans, and then obviously we want all the tomato and all of that, and our regular vegetables,
yeah,
and let's say our fruits also. So we're looking at the full range of food, which typically a small person like me, a small area that I've got around my house, I'm obviously not doing potatoes, onions,
yeah,
rice, and dals, and I'm doing some fresh beans, but I don't do beans that are dried and kept for the next season. But
okay,
suppose we are talking, keeping in mind now a small community that
community.
is trying to have all food groups and through the year. So then, just yeah, if you could comment on the different other different kinds of soils, or do you, yeah, just on that to handle all these things.
Yeah, so first is soil fertility, which is capacity of a soil to provide nutrition for the existing crop. So that is a natural, but depending, as you said, when we talk about wide range, then may not be every nutrient will be there in the soil in the required quantity. So we can do soil testing and then give it acquired soil fertility, pumping in some compost, manure, which are required for that particular month, and raising it. So one is the barrel method where you do it in big pots and barrels, some grafts you can raise, which will yield you fruit little faster. And also the nutrition need for the community can be done. So depending on the what area you have, it can be terrace garden, it can be at different corner of the society where people are growing, it can be done. So what we consider for soil is nitrogen, phosphorus, potash, NPK, that is their main. Then soil pH is there. So depending on the soil pH, whether the soil is acidic, alkaline, neutral, you have to select the plants and which will suit it. Suppose like somebody wants to grow strawberry. So first thing, whether Goan climate we can do that. If yes, then which variety will suit that? So all that has to be tried and tested. And after a few years of practice, yes, we can establish the cycle where we can say in January this particular crop is ready. In the rains, these gourds are doing really well. For example, bottle gourd is having good produce over bitter gourd. So which variety of bitter gourd shall we plant, which will yield us more? So all that can be understand. Talking about soil parameters, soil pH is there, then porosity of soil. So different soil things are there, which can be tested, which can be tried. We can do it in pots also. So that can be done for the society. And when we are doing stepwise, looking at different time frame, eventually we can establish a cycle where all this like beans, gourds, some basic fruits like banana, papaya, they have required year around. So if you do it, plan it properly, then yes, we can have year-round production of these fruits.
Okay, thank you, Bhagyashree. Clea, in this same area of this, topic, um, like suppose we take the example of not of terrace and all of that and pots. Suppose we are saying as a community we have, land, we have flat land. Then to get this all, full range of food, um, is there that we have to create different types of soils, some more porous, some less porous? What would you say the main, 4, 5 types of soils? Is there something like that for these different food groups that we need?
So I can answer through what I do, because I do grow food all year round in my farm and on my terrace, and they're usually heirloom seeds. from this area, but whole of India. I don't stick to Goa because we don't have that diversity, and I'm a big one for diversity. And so I use the same soil for all seeds from anywhere, whether even hybrid. Actually, if I use a hybrid seed, same soil. There are certain parameters that all soils and all plants need. And I'm going to just be very small on this because I teach soil and I teach soil courses and they last a year sometimes. So let me just explain. One, it has to be aerobic. The other, it has to be carbon rich. The third, it has to be mineral rich. And the fourth, it has to have a biodiverse set of local soil organisms. Now, this is a very tip of the iceberg list. If you have all of this in your soil, then you can grow anything in the same soil, and we do that. We grow anything in the same soil. And I grow anything in the same soil on my terrace. I don't take the soil from my farm. I use my own forest floor way of composting. Compost is ready in 10 days. It's aerobic, no smell, no hot, no work, nothing. And we use it on the terrace with the same seeds of the farm. And they're different soils, different mixtures, different inputs, but they are aerobic. They've got carbon, full complement of soil organism, not one over another. And it is mineral rich, and that's that. So the soil doesn't have to be different. So again, I'm going to emphasize, and I cannot emphasize this more. And I'm sorry, Jay, but without diversity, without monoculture, with monocultures, no matter what your seed is, you're not resilient, nor are you secure. And you may be doing really well, just like other monoculture farms around the world who use chemicals, they're doing very well. Monocultures do well till it doesn't do well. And then we say, oh yeah, the climate changed, or this locust turned up, or something else came along, then the monoculture is gone in one felt swoop. So biodiversity below ground, biodiversity above ground. Biodiversity above ground will ensure you have diverse foods all year round at any time. And I have not followed seasonal rules. I plant all the time, as if I'm a bird pooping out seed. I will plant tomatoes all year round, and I'm getting tomatoes even in the monsoon. In Goa, it doesn't happen for others. I plant every seed all year round. And when I remove, I plant. When I remove, I plant. And I have ground covers, which are all your microgreens. They're my ground covers. So I have a tomato plant, and on the bottom is all my methi little as a mulch. I have live mulch. I don't use leaves. And so you get this dense biodiverse amount of food in a small space. There are different colors, smells, and sounds because of the different insects. And that confuses the other insects and pests above ground, I'm saying. And so you can have your biodiversity all year round when you have your colors, smells, and other invite the beneficials. And you don't have to do anything else. You just reseed, make sure soil is never bare, and put all the waste exactly back where it came from. And that's all you have to do.
So, yes, Clea, I'm one of those persons. I also try to grow, tomato all year round. In the rainy season, of course, the tree grew till about even 5 feet height, but no tomatoes. And so now I'm waiting in this season for some tomatoes to come. And I've never managed to grow the big long radish and carrots in my soil. So maybe there's not enough porosity or carbon in it. My soil is too hard.
Soil organisms and carbon, soil organisms and carbon, and the whole set. You see, you need the beetle, you need the worm, you need the microbes, you need the fungi, they all work together. There's a soil food web that works. There's a local one, usually found under an old tree. You can inoculate, you give them the habitat, they need carbon as habitat. To allow the oxygen. You see, roots, Daryl, your muli and all their roots,
Yes.
They need to respire. They don't photosynthesize. Roots don't photosynthesize. They need to respire, which means they need oxygen. So your soil has to be airy or open.
Right.
The
Yeah, I
top,
think that's the problem with my soil. It's not that airy.
yes.
Because, yeah, right. Uh, Jay, what would you like to say about different types of soils if we want to grow, the full range of food through the year?
Yeah. So, Clea, see, I am not a proponent of monocropping at all. I mean, if I want to do something, I would want to grow a food forest in a barren place. Um, I'm not a monocropping kind of person. What I'm telling you is that there are thousands of farmers today who have been doing rotational monocropping for generations and
Yeah.
generations unknown,
Mm-mm.
and organic, of course, and they have very healthy and consistent produce even today because they know how to create the environment of the soil. And most of these farmers that I'm talking about are farmers within our network who use that enzyme which gives birth to the white Indian worm.
Mm.
So, which creates that environment, the Indian soil environment, which these worms, Daryl, which are in your garden, they feed on the Indian cow's dung. That's their food. So it's a whole ecosystem.
But Jay, so I don't supply, have any supply of cow dung to my soil. So what are these guys doing, put under the soil if they're not getting cow dung?
They don't have enough food. They don't have their ideal food. So if you put
Okay,
Indian cow dung, then they will start
okay.
breeding much better, and then maybe they will manage to throw out the red guys, and then maybe your fruiting will also improve because these guys will increase in quantity and go down deeper. And they are the ones that make the soil, put the oxygen in the soil deep inside.
Yeah, so so coming towards soil, what I use is my kitchen compost and whatever is plucked out and discarded in my garden. I compost all of that. So I do a mix of this kitchen waste, which has got fruits and some sugars and whatever you have it, and so that's how I do composting. So coming back to that, for full range of plants in a year, food in a year. Are you saying also that there is one type of soil only, or you need to create a hard aerated soil, two, three types of soils?
I agree with Clea in saying that if the soil has all the basic nutrients, it
Hmm.
will give birth. Uh, in the long run, what happens, and in between, how pest resistant is your plant, and how weather resistant it is, and these things, that will be the difference. Things can grow if you have a fairly healthy soil made
Right.
with any vermicompost from anywhere in the world. It's
So
okay.
yeah, I'll ask about vermicompost also one question. So what I'm getting is find that if you make minerally rich soil, then anything will grow in it. Now I'm only saying seeing two differences. Some soil that is little softer and more aerated, where these roots and tubers are there, and then a slightly more firm kind of soil. Because if I keep it so soft and aerated, after going through 1 or 2 feet, some of the plants start falling when there a lot of leaves are there because the soil is that's happening to my basil plants. I
That's
mean
true.
also the ants are kind of making holes near the roots, so after my basil plants become like 2 feet tall, the soil becomes soft or something and they start falling. So yes,
No,
I'm
your if you just add Indian cow dung, I think your whole ecosystem will liven up because you already have the worms and they're waiting for their food. That's all. I
okay,
think so.
okay. Yes, so interesting question that I've had, and I've kind of tried to talk to a couple of people about it. Because you mentioned vermicompost, okay, and I was also when we were having our community farm, we were running that vermicompost nice big unit. So I was simply thinking about the benefits of this vermicompost and just applying some basic science, because I come from an engineering background. So I could see what feed was being given to the worms. It's mostly green leaves, green leaves, green leaves, and not much of fruit and all of that. Not a big range. And then of course the worms were creating the compost and all of that. And then my simple scientific principle says if you give a narrow range, then what great expand a large range of nutrients are you expecting from that worm to make? Then I thought better is I give a bigger range of things in my normal compost. So, so is this a valid thing where I say that when a bigger range of material that goes into composting will create a bigger range of nutrients of compost than just feeding a lot of green leaves to these worms? They will obviously make a smaller range of nutrients. Clea, what do you think of that?
So the nutrition in what you so the nutrition in your green leaves or anything is dependent on what's in the soil, available in the soil. So if your soil has everything in it, I'm just explaining, if your soil has everything in it, good amount of nutrition with the right balance of all soil organisms, even if you give it green leaves, it will have everything in it. Very likely to, very likely.
Clea, I'll just come to that point again. What I'm saying is, let us take the soil is average, okay? Let's say I have average soil, and I'm trying to improve the soil, and I have got two methods. Would I take vermicompost, or would I do this wide range of composting green leaves along with fruits and so many other things?
I'll answer that. Just to tell anyone who would like to know where nutrition comes from, it comes from the soil. And which nutrition? So nutrition, can I just quickly just
Yes, sure.
myself. So nutrition falls into carbohydrates, fats, and protein as one set of nutrients. And there's other phytochemicals, another set, which is all your turmeric, curcumin, and pepperin, and all these lovely nutrients. And then there's minerals. Mineral nutrition is super important for carbohydrate, fats, proteins, and phytonutrients to be made by the plant. They're cofactors, they strengthen the immunity, they strengthen the plant to make the rest of the nutrients. So all three are nutrients. Now, if a soil is rich and in minerals created by soil organisms, and you've given them their food and habitat, then most often what comes up will be fully nutrient dense, even that one monoculture leaf. But because our soils are average and lacking in all of this, then without biodiversity, you will not have all the nutrients in your compost. So if the worms have been given cow dung, fed on cow, and the cow has only grazed on bad soil, there'll be very little nutrients in that cow dung, and there'll be very little nutrients for the worm. If the vermicompost has been given just grass clippings from a soil without zinc, without iron, without iodine, your vermicompost will not have zinc, iron. So the only good thing about vermicompost is it is a very soluble, small, bioavailable material, set of nutrients, whichever it has, whatever it may be. But, so I usually tend towards whatever is decomposing my material, the material should be biodiverse. I tend towards that to ensure full full complement of nutrients, just like your diet. If you ate a little bit of greens and some reds and some yellows and some rice and dal, you would have the entire complement of nutrition. Same thing in your compost. So it's not the organism that is the important thing, actually. It's not the worm. He is just decomposing what he is decomposing. It's what he is decomposing, or she is decomposing, or it is decomposing. What is the component? What does it have in it? It's not the organism. I would disagree with a lot of people. It's not the organism as much as,
Right.
if you talk about the organism, you have to talk about the entire set living off each other, with each other, not one better than the other. The whole lot have to be there working together, because there are bacteria that will bring in iron. If your soil doesn't have iron, it'll go find the iron, come attach to the soil roots. There's phosphate solubilizing bacteria, there's nitrogen fixing, free living bacteria. There's all kinds going on, not just the one worm or something else. And they all eat each other, they work with each other. So if you've got bad soil, biodiversity in your compost, whoever does the composting, if you've got good soil, it doesn't matter.
So, so if let's say the organisms are there in between, and if the root is that we got to give them, the minerals have to be good. So from where do we get that very basic, if our soil is not doing so well and they have got these organisms in it, but the organisms need all these different minerals and all of that. So how is, what are the roots or what are the sources of bringing in these minerals that these organisms will use to
Okay.
convert?
Can I answer
Yes,
that?
sure.
So when soil organisms do what they do dissolve soil. They acidify a little bit, and the soil itself starts dissolving, starts solubilizing, and releasing minerals locked in itself. That's one way. So you need soil organisms, but soil organisms are not going to be happy without their food and habitat. So you need to have it aerated, which means carbon has to be in the soil. And their food is biodiverse material. It is fruits, veg, urine, dung, and pieces of dead animal. That's where the nutrients come in from. A dead lizard will be eaten by ants in no time. They'll take it down, that'll decompose, it'll become nitrogen in the soil. So you get your minerals from what is decomposed, biodiverse, and that they're there living happy and well, so that their activity dissolves the soil a little, and they will only be like that if there's an aerobic environment and a home for them which carbon provides.
Yeah, okay. Yes, thank you. Bhagyashree, would you like to add to anything about soil fertility, how viewers can understand, better making better soil? Of course, everybody knows cow dung. People know vermicompost. People know kitchen composting. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, what Clea mentioned rightly is, yeah, there are a lot of microbes which are working on it. And now, in order to support this organic farming, there are some companies which have come up with this culture. So we have for rocky soil some cultures which will mobilize potash. Then there are phosphorus mobilizing a microbe culture. So one who wants to, okay, I have attended this, I have understood, okay, microbes important. I need to do it in my soil, but I should have understanding ki what things are there. As you mentioned, ki this vermicompost. This is actually the thing, because whenever people, kitchen gardeners approach us, I want compost. Vermicompost is the okay, that is there in their mind. Vermicompost is the first thing I need to add for my plant. If the manure requirement is there. But this deep thinking, how the vermicompost, which worm, using of leaves, this is not there. Much of the vermicompost that is available in the market, the commercial plants where gobar, some leaves are collected and commercial plants are there. They are producing particular number of, so it is available cheap. So home composting, doing your own soils, using things like panchagavya, these are the things we are using in sustainable way. Definitely we can utilize our soils, meet the requirement of the nutrition, and we can grow around us. And the quality and this will be really better than what we are doing for commercialized manure, which is available really. So this is my view on the same.
Okay, thank you, Bhagyashree.
Can I add one point to Bhagyashree's? So yes, Bhagyashree, there are lots of little formulations to add soil organisms to soil, just like you can buy them, phosphate soluble, phosphorus soluble. But when you add one over another, you're not getting the entire complement working together. You're just focusing, I want phosphorus. You're not getting, the list of nutrients that a plant requires was originally 26 from the periodic table. Now it's gone up to 108, and we're growing. So we can't pick and choose like that. The best way now to do it is what I have found works the best is to inoculate my soil with local forest soils, topsoils. I take forest topsoil, small amounts of it, where the entire and I inoculate my compost, and then they make babies, they grow and they take over and they do a fantastic job. I have never used a pesticide in 12 years of my life. And I get abundant crops with long, they think I've got GM seeds. And it's only because I think I've inoculated my soil with local forest species.
Yes, yes. So
In
that's
fact,
what you meant.
there is, even in the cities, everywhere there is a people tree. So
Exactly.
Yes,
if you take the stone and mud from below the people tree and add it to on just a little bit, just a little bit. If you add it on your plants or in your compost, it makes a huge difference because it has certain organisms that give rise to a whole ecosystem when you put it.
Exactly. An old
yes,
banyan
yes.
tree, under bamboo, in a people tree. There are so many places which are quiet, undisturbed, and these guys are happy with their food and all, and they're there. And you can inoculate, and then you don't have to buy because to be sustainable, you shouldn't be buying. Because one day something's
Yeah.
going to happen, and that company may shut down, or the embodied energy, or the carbon footprint, water footprint of making it, bottling it, sending it to you, packaging may not work. Then what will you do? So it's best to, as I said, local
Simplest.
seeds, local species, local everything, local.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
Okay. Thank you, Clea, for that idea. Very nice. So people can go by it, to the nearest hill, mountain, forest area, and get some soil which is very local and ancient to the land, and inoculate their soils. Wonderful.
But give them plant habitat. Habitat means carbon, lots of leaves, and their food means you have to give them a biodiverse diet.
That's right. Right.
Including dung and urine and waste, and even even if you have fish and meat in your waste, that's fine. You just need to know how to play it.
So thank you. So I'll just I have a third question, and then we'll take the Q&A from the audience. Uh, so how can one manage to grow food all year round for their family, or community consumption? Um, are there is it a very detailed science for every locality, or is there some rule like not more than two crops in a year? If you take it out, harvest everything from a soil, is two crops more than enough? Or if you're doing three, is it too much? Do the plants take out so many nutrients, and that you have to put in nutrients in the soil, and especially the time in between? If you harvest certain grains, then obviously you'll have to put some manure and all inside the soil, leave it for how long, and that will let you know in which next season you can grow what. And because this is what I'm seeing, where people are trying to do three crops a year and all, they're pulling out so many minerals that the subsequent crop and all is not getting enough nutrition. It's and it's becoming a weak plant. So Jay, would you share your idea on that about having food through the year, and this aspect of should it be only one crop a year, or should we do exactly like what nature wants? One thing is only growing in one area, and of course, it's not one thing in an area. Suppose four, five things are growing, and we just let them grow and be satisfied with what's coming out of there, or do we get some scope of designing things ourselves so that the food flows as per our requirements?
So this is you're talking at a systemic level. Your question is.
So yeah, same question at a let's say a small a community level, where we are trying to let's say for 100 families, and we have got enough space around us, and we are just trying to produce whatever we need: grains, beans, peas, fruits, vegetables.
See, like Clea also mentioned that the nutrition is given by the soil. The ultimate idea of successful farming is good soil, uh, and how to create that good soil is the key. So you can create what they call is gold in your soil, like black gold. It's called when you create very rich soil which is well aerated. They call it black gold. So once that, so the idea should be that you create a lot of this black gold, and then you can plant anything, and then you have your companion plants, and various experiments you can do. But the base is that you have to, in any community or in any locality, any city, anywhere where you want to grow things, the first most important thing becomes preparation and creation of that a very good, healthy, rich, indigenous soil with indigenous microorganisms.
Thanks, Jay. Clea, would you like to say something about through the year? Of course, one thing would be perennial foods, and a lot of leafies are many leafy vegetables are perennials. But for the rest range of our food, can people grow at the rate that they enrich the soil, or they should go slow? What is?
Yeah, you can. I do it. You can come and see. Uh, you can come to my terrace. I grow all species all year round, uh, largely perennials, but even the annuals and biennials I'm managing all year round, although they're supposed to be seasonal. So it's a matter of design. You create microclimates for them by shading out bits. By say, suppose a lettuce needs to have the winter. What is winter? Cool, right?
Yes.
Cool and a bit dry. So in the monsoon, so in the summer, my northeast corner is cool. I block out the western sun. I block out the eastern sun with my peru, my banana, and I've got lettuce in summer. So you can, I'm just giving a very extreme example because I don't really like lettuce. But if I had someone to say, I really want lettuce all year round, I can do it for them via design. So you can, via design, it's not soil, it's above ground creation of microclimates also. You can create and grow anything all year round. If you're ready to give up certain foods, even better. But if you're not, you can try to grow them. They will very likely grow. Because grow has interestingly got a lot of sunlight and water. We are not that depleted. So we can actually, via design, with clever thinking, grow anything, anytime.
Okay, thank you, Clea. Now I'll take the Q&A. Any book? This is from Pradeep Sengupta. Is there any book to for a kitchen garden initiator kind of book? Anything that comes to mind? Anybody wants to mention a quick guide to a kitchen garden?
Hi, can I answer this? There.
Or yeah, I think given a guide or any course that any one of you are doing, which will teach these people how to grow a kitchen garden soon.
I
I
do
think
Book.
I think one book that everyone should read is Masanobu Fukuoka's Natural Farming. That in that he explains so much of his philosophy, just not exact techniques. So you understand the philosophy so much from him that it's a must read for anyone who wants to do farming, grow anything.
kitchen gardening though. I think Sujit Chakravarti's book is a good start. Organic kitchen gardening, Sujit Chakravarti. It's a good start. Yeah, that would be the book for India that I would suggest.
Okay, Bhagyashree, you want to also mention something? I can see.
Mr. Miguel Braganza's book, Growing Organically, which is explained in very simple way, layman's term about basic vegetable patch and all how to start. So once you can go ahead. So it is also talking about companion planting, about understanding the soil needs and pest management, and basic tips to grow vegetables to look after are given. So which is quite handy book, and many people are.
Yeah, so that's one. There's also, Daryl, I've collated all these books into this course I gave, which is called Grow Food in Small Spaces Fast. It's
Right.
going on online now, and I'm doing it in January. And so anyone is welcome to come. I put all this information together, all the books, everything, to something that's very doable. And I think there are people already in your, I think Nandini's done the course. I think
Okay, okay.
so.
So if it's on your website, could you just type your website in the chat box?
I will send the flyer to you, Daryl, when it's ready today or tomorrow.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you, Clea. So, and Bhagyashree too. So I have a question, which is, what's the best way of growing vegetables and herbs when you don't have much land to grow, like growing in pots? Could you give some tips to create basic, good quality soil? Okay, so in pot, how to create good quality soil? Of course, Clea already said one very good method is go to your close by locality, where there is some forest or hill or something, and you get some soil from there and put it in. And besides that, what else can be done for good soil for pots?
So who want to answer?
Anyone? Yeah, Clea, please.
So basically, what I do in gardens in small spaces is that you can get soil from where you like, from your compost, from compost. Make sure you've got the full complement of soil life. There's carbon in it. There is a good nutrient bank, and it has some of your mineral soil also, that red soil or whatever in it. Otherwise, your plant will fall down. So that's the only thing I can say in a seminar like this. But I do urge you to join the course if you're serious. I make it very, very easy for people. And Nandini has just written that she learned so much. She's growing so much better. She wants to even repeat the course. I'm not pushing myself. I'm just saying if you're really keen, I've done so much homework to put this together for you. Come and join us and you may benefit. Yeah. The answers aren't quick like this. You can't
Right.
just, yeah.
Yeah, I know soil. Yeah, soil is very detailed work.
What
So,
is everything put together becomes the system, of your backyard or balcony or whatever.
right.
Can I
Yes.
uh, give my view on this? See, making soil has been an activity that man has had to do for thousands of years, if not millions of years. And it was something that all humans have had to teach their whatever children and generations going forward. So if someone has to understand it technically, one can study for very long, no doubt about it, and learn a lot more. But there are certain basic techniques how I've been taught. For example, I am from an urban background, and I had never I have no connection with farming till just a few years ago. Um, and I was taught in very simple ways how they are taught in the village of how to do farming. There was no technicalities necessarily explained to me about carbon and potassium and etc. And through watching and learning and understanding the certain systems, one can learn how to create a good compost and start farming in their pots at home. It's not rocket science. More important is to actually start. Then you'll find a way somewhere.
Yes, good compost is important, but unfortunately, it takes time to build up enough to do a kitchen garden immediately.
So we have an enzyme which I want to offer everyone who's on this meeting today, and it's free of cost. It's developed by Annie Coley, and thousands of people around the country have phenomenal results with it. She produces what is getting to be known as the finest spirulina in the world. But she says that this enzyme, which she has distributed free decades ago, is her greatest creation. So I urge you all to please, it's free of cost. We share it free of cost. And because she calls it her greatest creation, she never sold it. She just distributed it free. And maybe that's the reason why it didn't kind of get a very wide scale adoption in our country, because she gave it away free, and free things don't really have value. If she would have patented it and sold it to the government, maybe it would have been a different story.
So what do you mean when you say enzyme? When an enzyme usually activator. It's an activator,
Correct.
and
Correct.
it enhances a reaction.
Correct.
So
So yeah, so this her enzyme is derived from the cows, Indian cows dung, not any other cow, and she has taken the eggs of the worms that live in the cow dung, which are the white worms, and she has extracted it into water and created a culture out of it. That's what she calls an enzyme. There's nothing else added to it. It's just the culture of these eggs,
so
which she
that,
has taken from the cow dung and created a living culture out of it. So this is a liquid, and it's an aerobic liquid. Clea, you had come to my store a couple of years ago, I think 1 or 2 years ago, when I started, 3 years ago almost. And we had a brief chat about the enzyme, and you had mentioned that it's an anaerobic, and I didn't get a chance to respond to you. But it's not anaerobic. It's an aerobic enzyme, and it's just a living culture.
enzymes aren't aerobic or anaerobic. I think there's some
It's
chemistry missing here.
it's a living culture. It's a living culture she has created out of these eggs.
If it's a culture, let me just say, if it's, I don't want to get into this honestly, but if it's a culture and if it's living, then it's not an enzyme, it's an organism.
You're right. So, because for a lack of a better term for in the with farmers, she says enzyme.
Okay, so
How do you teach an Indian farmer what the difference between the term enzyme and something else? You know?
what we do with Indian farmers is say, "Acha keeda."
Right.
Yeah. So it's called Safed Kechwa, and ye enzyme se banao. It's just a colloquial term used
Okay, so
to explain to farmers how to use it.
you've just got loads of eggs in that mix,
That's right.
and those eggs then hatch and all of it. So
As soon as you put a little jaggery in it,
that's
they
correct.
start feeding on the jaggery and they start multiplying.
It's not even eggs; they're babies.
Yeah, they're babies.
Okay, so you just have to say organisms. Okay, now I've understood. Because as
Yeah.
a chemist, I have a chemistry background. An enzyme is not a living thing.
Right. These are terms like Safed Kechwa
Hmm.
is also, I don't have the technical term for it. And there was a big debate a couple of years ago on one of Earthkeeper's WhatsApp group about this worm. And there was a known permaculturist who dissed the idea that no such worm can exist because they didn't know the name of it and neither did I. So they said that that means it does not exist. This is mosquito larvae or something like that. And then there was this whole debate about it, and I left it at that.
It's
But these things don't have names like everything in English, you know, sometimes.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you. I'll take the next question from Ashish. Says, I see many people buying microbe cultures like Pseudomonas too. Isn't this needless and potentially risky to tamper with the microbial balance? Pseudomonas, microbe cultures like Pseudomonas.
believe so. I believe so. I think it's absolutely sacrilegious under the name of organic farming to be buying any cultures. And you need to go under an old tree or a forest to get your culture. I honestly believe that, and that's a very personal belief. It is proven to work in ecology, proven to work in biology, and proven to work in environmental sciences, proven to work in my field. That I wouldn't buy a single culture, not Trichoderma virdi, not Pseudomonas, not this, not that, because you're biasing it to again a monoculture of that. You need the entire ecosystem working.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and definitely you're increasing certain microbes in your soil which are not native and organic to them. So why would you cause a disbalance in the soil?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right, right. Thank you.
But that's only my personal opinion. They'll shoot me down. I better hide. But that's my personal opinion.
Oh, thank you, please. So, Ashish, again, another question. What is the impact of hybrids or GMO foods on, on soil health? Yes, I mean, we do know that it's harmful, but yeah, his next question is, if a seed pack does not explicitly mention, then how do we know whether it is a heirloom or something else? Is flowering an indicator?
But just by looking at it, he is not going to know so easily unless he knows what that
Source?
specific thing looks like and he can recognize it. It's like going to a foreign country and uh, picking a person out of a crowd.
Can I answer that also?
Yes, yes.
All hybrids have it written on the packet. Usually it's called F1, F1 hybrid. F1 means first filial. So the say a green thing marries a red thing, and you get a green and red thing. So that's the first filial, first birth, and that's a hybrid. So it's always written on the packet, hybrid F1. So the parents are only with the people who hybridized it, the green or the red. So it will not give you the same seed again, but you will again get all kinds of greens and red if you save seed. You can actually save seed of hybrids, but you will not get the same thing. You'll get all kinds. It's okay. You'll still get a chili or a tomato. So that's what a hybrid is. And it's always written on the packet. The heirloom ones you buy from special dealers who sell heirloom seeds. There are a long list. I'm happy to give you those. Bhagyashree is one person who sells them. I think Jay also sells them. And there are many, many people who save heirloom seeds and sell them. And they tell you. What is heirloom? Heirloom is a traditional variety of seed.
I define heirloom more importantly as genetically uncompromised seeds.
Uh, I'm a geneticist also by training, and I would not, there is no such thing as compromise. Genetic variation, mutations all happen constantly. It's part of living on this earth and evolution. And there is no concept as uncompromised or compromised. Genomes are meant to change.
They're meant to change in nature, ma'am, not at the hand of man.
So that
Right.
is,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
labeled is what I'm saying. It's labeled.
Yes.
If someone has done it, they write on the packet F1 hybrid, and there are others who say these are native seeds.
Okay. Thank you. We have a question from Nestor Angel here, which is two questions. Now, the first one is, what are the nutrients available in vermicompost? As far as I know, there's hardly any NPK or micronutrients in vermicompost. What it contains is large amount of organic carbon. So, yes. So, what about vermicompost? Is it really nutritious or?
It depends on what the worm has eaten, and most vermicompost has very little carbon and more nutrients actually. Uh, if you do a proper analysis of vermicompost, it's famous for being nutrient dense and carbon low. As a rule. So, and the nutrition is only dense because it's soluble. It's been eaten by the worm and pooped out, which means that what it's readily available, that nutrition. Now, what is in there, N, P, or K, will depend on what the worm ate. If the worm ate a lot of insects or bacteria, which it does, then you would have quite a lot of nitrogen in the vermicompost. But if it ate only grass or dry grass, it will be dominant in some micronutrients and a little more carbon than otherwise. But vermicompost is not famous for carbon. It's famous for soluble micronutrients and other nutrients, and that which is in the food it ate only.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Yes, that's also, my original question. That's what I was feeling, that, it would be limited to that.
Yeah.
Going to the next question of Nestor, which is very interesting, which has been on my mind also. Uh, is it possible to feed a large population using so-called organic practices as well as permaculture? Have any of the panelists grown food on a commercial scale? Now, just after that question, I want to add something more. That yeah, people do feel big farmers, what we call, there is a such thing as big farmers, which have been supported by governments and policies and subsidies and all that. And this whole system of growing sugarcane in one part of the country and growing something else somewhere else. We already know those models have, one crop in various places is an imbalanced ecosystem. And especially because I'm involved with this, eco village in Goa, I'm coming to that question again. Since Nestor is asking, growing on a commercial scale. Uh, so is that big kind of growing on large volumes, is that supposed to be the model that one farmer does three things for, uh, you know, one fourth of the state or something like that? Or are we looking at a future that is, where there is one farmer, any farm is doing a ecosystem balance? Because when he uses the word permaculture, I'm sure permaculture does not involve, you know, something like a few crops on a large scale. It's an entire food forest and ecosystem.
What I can say, Daryl, is that if the rainforest can scale up, so can permaculture.
Right.
And you can then feed as many people or species as the rainforest feeds. They may look different, but it can feed volumes. The earth takes over and works for you.
Yeah. So
So
now, yeah. So one model is, let's say, the food forest and the rainforest, where it supports so many, animals and all that. And the next model is what we do for ourselves in on the, flat land, where we're trying to grow cabbages and broccoli and all the chilies and all our lettuces, tomato, carrot, cucumber. Uh, so maybe his question is about that.
So even that.
can I take
Large
that?
scale, can this be done on large scale commercial farming?
So
Can
yes,
I?
1 second, Jay, just quickly, you can scale up anything that's earth friendly because the earth will take over and scale up for you. You can go to any size. You can go to any size and sell. You don't have to have monocultures in straight lines. That's the issue. So there are many permaculture farms around the world that are selling, if you have that model of selling. But the more and more people are going towards grow your own food, which means no one's buying, which means commercial growing is going to be outdated one day. Once people start growing their own, you're going to not want to buy. Then what's going to happen to all that produce?
See, but urban people don't have an opportunity to really grow their stuff much.
Right.
Uh, and the population is too huge right now. I mean, I agree. I would love that if the whole world was just a forest and a food forest at that. But the reality is that our populations are huge and we need to produce food for our population. And that's why Nestor is doing large scale farming. And what I want to say is that there are thousands to Nestor. There are thousands of farmers who are growing heirloom, not thousands, lakhs and millions maybe of farmers still today in our country growing organic heirloom produce on various sizes and scales, ranging from half an acre to 10 acres and 20 acres and higher. As a cooperative, there are heirloom people. Heirloom is just desi, so desi seeds. These farmers, they have cooperatives and they're doing large scale growing. So that is happening, and that's very much possible. But the soil condition, the soil has to be created. The real natural condition has to be created, and the correct traditional knowledge has to be there. That which are you taking the local heirloom seeds? Are you planting it? Do you know which are the companion plants? Are you making the compost correctly? All these things have to be figured out. Then it's possible, as it's happening already.
Yeah, and also the farmers I worked with in Ahmednagar, there were suicidal farmers who were giving up farming, and they've got the monoculture of oranges, and under their monoculture of oranges, we've added the entire range from onions and vegetables. They're making 4 times the money, 4 times the yield in a smaller space than before with
Yeah,
correct.
absolutely.
They're selling and they're happy, and now they're not The stories are quite amazing.
Yeah, you can do 5 layers and so many layers to maximize.
They're making more money than they did before, and they're making
Yeah,
more produce than they did before. We're
absolutely.
in a smaller space than before.
Yeah, true that.
So I thank you. I have the next question from Varshika. How can we get rid of microplastics in the soil?
See, even an inorganic soil, uh, after 3 years of doing organic farming, when you test it, it does tend to tend to get all the green ticks on the soil, but there will be some contamination. But over the years, nature has a way of uh, dissipating it. We don't know if it's completely always dissipated or not at a very micro level.
It
I
gets it
wouldn't know.
out. No,
Huh?
you can nature will erode it out. That's it. No,
Yeah,
organisms that would eat.
because everyone has to eat it. Just like we ate the plastic, those organisms have to eat the plastic, and things will happen to them just like they happen to us. And
Plastic.
over the years, the generation after generation, they survive, and then things go on.
See, theoretically, plastic is a hydrocarbon. It's got carbon bonds, which means something on this planet will be able to eat it and break it down. It's very likely there are microbes and fungi that do that, and if they're in their soil, you will get rid of it. If they're not
It
in
could take a million years, but it would be possible.
you just have to get the right organisms that will eat it. Yeah. And then
I don't think any organism was designed to break down plastic in nature.
found some white, they found a white worm that does it. Really.
No, they can do it just like we can also eat plastic. I'm sure there are organisms also who can eat plastic and live a few days. But I don't think nature created any organism to eat plastic.
They didn't, but there are organisms known
Yeah,
for
I
breaking
think
down now. Yeah.
yeah, I think environment has to drive an organism to do something extraordinary. Like a frustrated man will go and have alcohol, though even though it's going to kill his liver. So I think some environment change are going to make some germs go crazy and go eat other plastic just to get high and get over their grief. So yeah, maybe let's hope for something like that. I will go to the next question. Yeah, this is one that I have too. What can be done to prevent ants from destroying plants and even from getting into the compost bin? Now, I want to add something of my observation. Okay. So, yes, he says, what, anyway, it's anonymous, so I don't know whether it's a he or she. What can be done to prevent plants from destroying plants? So, now we have to try and understand in which way they're destroying plants. And I will give 2 examples. And then from getting into compost bin. So coming to the destroying plants part. Now in my garden, uh, even under the pomegranate tree and under the basil tree also, I get all these red ants just making holes everywhere and getting into the soil, loosening up their roots, and my trees are getting weak. So so maybe that kind of damage at the soil level. Now I'll just give you an example on the top of the plant. Um, which plants was it? My curry patta. I could see these ants going up to the curry patta, the tender shoots on top, and going there, depositing something and coming back. Then I couldn't figure out it's too small. Then later I realized they were small kind of aphids. And those aphids would suck out the juice from the top shoot of the curry patta, and all of them would get black. And then later those plants would go and eat up those aphids like food. So these ants are so smart that they take some eggs, they put it in a tender spot, they'll allow those eggs to feed and put their probe into that thing, suck out the juice, live, and then when they get nice and meaty, the plants go and eat up those guys as food. So I mean, they are doing farming. So so how do we address these two things? Okay, plants at the roots and ants at your roots making holes and ants doing all of this crazy business on top of the plant.
Who do you want? Can I tell you my experience with ants?
Yes, please.
I've never had an ant eat my roots. no matter how many there are. I've got anthills in my farm and I don't destroy them. Ants only eat dead roots, if
Dead
at
roots.
if at all. Which means you've overwatered.
Yeah, I think overwatering is that thing. I have done, a wrong combination of plants where some need excess water, some need less. And then the ones that require less, they get overwatered. So maybe
And
that.
the root dies, then when the root dies, the white ant comes to eat it. Red ants don't usually eat roots. White ants can, and if you keep the right amount of carbon in your soil, you can, even if you overwater, it drains off, but it still remains moist, and so you can prevent ants or any organism destroying your roots if you have the balance first of all the biodiversity in there, and second, if your root isn't dead. If you above ground, what's even more interesting is there's something called a philosphere. Philosphere is a set of organisms that actually live on leaves, and your ants and your aphids and your whitefly and all of these may be seen as pests, but in small doses, they're all predator prey stories going on, and there are homes in leaves for bacteria and fungi that actually help nutrition uptake and many other things. It's a whole big topic. This organisms above ground and organisms below ground. But it's very likely that the damage is caused because of a lack of balance and already damaged or lack of nutrition or lack of immunity plants.
May I add
Yeah.
something to that? I'd like to corroborate that. I was taught in a very simple way this whole concept. To understand it is like when plants have a problem, they are they when they're in trouble, they're screaming and they are calling out for help. And what happens is that all these organisms actually come to get drawn towards these plants to help them, but they are actually not able to help these plants. They are not predators on the plants. They've come to help. It's just a philosophical way of looking at it. And that happens because the plant is in trouble.
Mm,
So, like very rightly Clea said, that you have to fix other things rather than put pesticides.
absolutely, absolutely. And I've done it. I have, without pesticides, reduced, I mean, got no pests right now in my terrace garden, which
Absolutely.
because coconut is full of whitefly. And there's very little on my guava, maybe, which is a foot away.
In fact, if you see so many trees of Goa, the coconut trees, mango trees, all of them have disease now. And
Right.
all sorts of pests are attacking them because our soil has become and the environment has become weak, and they're not getting their nutrition and everything. So now pests are attacking because they're asking for help, and these pests come to help, and that becomes a confusion, and they end up hurting the tree instead of helping.
A common thing is that when plants start yellowing or drooping, it attracts pests.
Yeah. If it's not healthy, basically immunity is not high.
Hmm. And monoculture sadly attracts.
Yeah, I'm not a big proponent of monoculture, don't get me wrong, but all I wanted to say is that we know farmers who have beautiful produce. They've been doing almost monoculture for practically thousands of years. We don't know. It's generational in their family.
Now, of course, traditional farming
But
is
they maintain their soil, they know what to rotate with, and they have their own system set. They know within which to work. They don't abuse monocropping like a westernized system of kilometers of monocropping.
yeah, yeah. I'm still a bit nervous because a lot of the farmers I worked with have had devastation because of their monocrop. If their crop went, they had nothing else to fall back on.
Because they are not able to maintain the soil nutrition.
That's correct. That's correct. Absolutely. But there's also above ground biodiversity, which helps to hold it all
Of
in.
course, of course, of course.
Okay, so next simple question, but yeah, important. What can be done to increase carbon content in the soil?
So carbon comes into life forms via photosynthesis. So when a plant lives, It is bringing carbon into itself. And any dry matter, any dry plant matter can be used to put
Dry
carbon.
leaves is the best.
Dry leaves, wood chips, wood shavings, sawdust, rice husk, cocoa peat, all of these are dry plant materials.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Next question from TGVH. Uh, maybe, what is your take on biopesticides?
Can I take that quickly?
Yes, please.
I say our because Annie Collier has created a system with the enzymes to recreate the environment of yesteryears. That's why I always say we. But basically, our system is we take the same living culture which has those eggs, and sometimes if we have to make a pesticide, if it's absolutely necessary, then there are a few additions done to that, and that becomes your pesticide also. This is the same concept in your Panchgavya and your traditional ways of just making small changes in your nutrition mix to add the pesticide property to it.
I'm not in favor of biopesticides at all.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
They change the balance of the organisms in an ecosystem.
Yeah. It's like a medicine. I mean, you only take a medicine if your immunity is low and you've gotten into some severe trouble. But you shouldn't be getting to that point.
It's you're introducing a living species. It's a bit like introducing rabbits to Australia. You don't know where it's going to go and what it's going to do.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any way to tackle untimely rains? Or maybe the effect of untimely rain. So now it's not clear too early or too late, but any comments on that? Untimely rains.
Biodiversity. Something will live, something will die. You'll still have food.
Right, right.
I would say little self-consciousness is required for everyone to realize that our daily actions are responsible for cutting down the trees.
Yes.
And that's why we have no water.
Okay, now I'm just asking one simple thing, whether it's a natural progression that's happening through the seasons because of climate change and whatever is being happening with all the pollution and the heat, that is being generated from so many machines and vehicles and all of that. Uh, so we are noticing in most places in India, at least, that the monsoons have stretched themselves over 1 month. In Goa, it's been 1.5 months, right? Uh, so some people may say it's being geoengineering through the HARP machines all across the world. Uh, and so how do we deal with this? Or what is the prediction for next year's monsoon? Do we think it's going to go 1 month further?
See, when I came to Goa 3 years ago, someone older local person told me there used to be 4 seasons in 4 types of monsoons in Goa. These were known patterns traditionally, 4. So either in any year it would fall in one of those 4 patterns. Now all those patterns are gone. So this is a very difficult question. I'm working in rainwater harvesting as well, but that's a whole different thing altogether.
To be climate secure, if you have biodiversity, you will at least have some food, if not what you expected.
Yeah, biodiversity on a large scale.
Yeah.
Like a forests.
No, it can be in a small scale also. It can be in your kitchen garden. It can be in any.
Yeah, but more and more, yeah.
Yeah, you can. It doesn't. So we do food forests which have annual ground covers. You can do your cabbages, carrots, and turnips in a food forest. So it's a.
No, but to impact rain, you need to do you need a large green cover.
Biodiversity, honestly, and you need to also say, now suppose you know that rain is going to come at an odd time. You create areas of microclimate in your landscape, if it's large, especially using what we call swales and trees and other things. So then you plant over, you guide the water to a spot where only water loving species will thrive. And then you can have, if you don't have your rice, you can have your tubers. You can have your bananas. Your raw banana is like a rice if you want, tapioca, anything. But you know, you can play with food security using design and biodiversity.
Okay, thank you, Clea. A question, maybe last couple of questions because we have reached our time. One is from Vishwas. How do you maintain 5 varieties of ladyfinger heirloom seeds and also take an abundant harvest?
Altogether.
Yeah.
Actually, I grow red local okra with the seven-sided okra, with the green okra, with the small one and the spineless one, all in the same garden. And if so, and I grow different beans: the purple bean, the red bean, and the green bean. All local seeds, all native seeds, all in the same garden. You know, I have various kinds of tubers all in the same garden. That's what I mean. Keep the diversity in, something may go, the others will stay. Within species and between species.
Okay, so yeah, maybe the last question. Is it advisable to add bone meal, fish meal, or even rock phosphate to fruit saplings when planting them?
I wouldn't advise to add it directly, but I would definitely add it if I'm making a soil which is depleted of nutrients, and allow it to decompose before we use it as a soil.
Okay, okay, got it. So you would put that, let it decompose, let it become into soil, and then you would
It
use
becomes
it.
food for soil organisms. Let the soil organism say, I love this rock phosphate, the phosphate solubilizing bacteria. Let the soil organism say, I like these bone pieces, it'll give me calcium, magnesium. Let me eat it, poop it out, make it soluble, become soil, and then you can use that for saplings.
Yes, we are done with our questions. So I would like to conclude today's session here. A big thank you to our 3 panelists and thanks to audience as well for hanging in here. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at the same time on the same link for our day 14 topic. And the most interesting and important one, why are Indian farmers protesting? Okay, that's going to happen tomorrow at 6 p.m. So namaste and have a lovely evening.